call to order this meeting of the Marin Local Agency Formation Commission. Vita, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bailey.
Here.
Commissioner McEntee.
Here.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Murray.
Here.
Commissioner Blanchfield.
Here.
Commissioner Conley.
Here.
Commissioner Rodoni.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Brown absent. Commissioner Caius.
Here.
Commissioner Skelton. Commissioner Skelton absent. Commissioner Arnold. Commissioner Arnold absent. We have a quorum.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason. Mike, thank you. Goodness. I always forget to turn the mic on here. Thank you very much. Agenda review. So does anyone want to change anything on the agenda? Seeing none, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Move the proof.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Murray, seconded by Commissioner Blanchfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty, thank you very much. We will now move to public open time. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the commission on any matter not on the current agenda. All statements that require a response will be referred to staff for reply in writing or will be placed on the commission's agenda for consideration at a later meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anybody would like to make a public comment? No? All right, seeing none, we'll close public open time and move on to the consent calendar. These are items that are considered ministerial or non-substantive and subject to a single motion approval. The chair will also consider requests from the commission to pull an item for discussion. Does anyone on the commission want to pull an item? Jack, did you want to pull something? Commissioner Baker, I think you wanted to pull an item.
Yeah, and I apologize, it's not going to be going. I've got a hearing problem right now because of an infection, so bear with me, please.
Mike?
Anyway, I did have a, yeah, thank you, Dennis. On the minutes, page 7.
Oh, hold on a second, so let's just, so you want to pull the minutes. I would actually like to pull item number 6. Does anyone else want to pull anything?
I do. I wouldn't classify it as pulling, it's just a recommendation. But let's go with that.
Okay, on those two or a different one?
It's on
Number 5, okay. Well, we can pull, so we will pull 1, 5, and 6. Can I have a motion to approve items 2, 3, and 4 of the consent calendar? Moved by Commissioner Bailey and seconded by Commissioner Rodoni. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so Jason, will you give us the staff report for number 1?
Jason Freed, item number 1 is your staff minutes. I believe Commissioner Baker had a couple of amendments he wanted to make to the minutes.
And I apologize again for not hearing very well tonight. It's the minutes. Yeah, okay, on the minutes, page, thank you, Ken Tennis. Page 7 of the minutes. Jason and I discussed earlier, I think it's the annexation is indicated, or de-annexation, but he's going to take care of that later. My change under file 1338, the sentence that following the paragraph that says Commissioner Murray requested blah, 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 that actually was myself that requested that follow-up, and then Jason did give me an exhibit to look at. I would also mention item D, just below that, commission workshop should be September 12th. And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jack. Any further discussion on this item? Jack, do you want to make the motion to approve? Do you want to make the motion to approve this one?
Yeah, so moved.
Mike's?
Thank you. Yeah, the mics do have, they will turn off after a little while, so you do have to check and see that the little red light is on. And that's a reminder myself as well. So moved by Commissioner Baker. Do we have a second to approve the minutes? Second. Is that you, Slim? Yes. Seconded by Commissioner Bailey. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so that one is done. Item 5. Okay. Our counsel, Janet Colson, can give the report on this one.
Yes, no, I'm sorry, I'm not able to give a report on this one at this moment, I'm sorry.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to just give us your,
Can you ask
just, you want to give us your comments?
See if I can point it out and push this button at the same time. This is item number 5 on page 4, and it says that the commission could authorize the chair to enter into a new agreement with Plan West Partners to provide for additional time for interim executive officer services in the event an executive officer has been appointed. If so, we would recommend using a model template provided by our firm. I think it would be helpful maybe to put in parentheses who we is. It's council, I think, is recommending. I think for somebody reading these minutes, they say, well, who is we?
Oh, I'm
So-
sorry. Are you on,
I'm actually that.
which, are you, where,
It's number 5 on page 4 of your document.
of
con-
the,
of the,
of the Plan West memo?
no, it's of the minutes,
Oh, okay. So we're back to the minutes.
yeah.
Okay, so I apologize. I didn't realize you were making a comment on the minutes.
So it's just something simple that I don't think really, it's just having a declaration in, when we refer to we, who we is.
Oh, I understand, I'm sorry. Yes, it would be Beth Weston Krieger.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that was, that's the minutes. All right, so we did not need to pull, did you want to pull item
No,
5? Okay.
no.
All right, then, do we have any questions or comment on item 5? Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve item 5.
I think the motion should be to modify the previous motion and to make a fresh motion to approve the minutes with the modification just suggested, and then secondly, to approve item number 5.
Thank you for clarifying that, Commissioner Bailey. So moved by Commissioner Bailey,
Second.
second by Commissioner Rodoni. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So that was 1 and 5. Right, is that where we are? All right. So number 6, Jason, would you give a report? I pulled this one just to highlight the process by which we transfer funds between the county and our bank account, just so it's clear to the commissioners. So Jason, if you want to just give a report on that.
Sure. Jason Freed, your executive officer. The way it works right now is all the money that we collect from all the county, the cities, and the special districts is done so by the county. It goes into they keep their money in an account, and then over time, we pull the money out of that account and goes currently into our Wells Fargo account so we can pay our bills. Traditionally, up until the end of June or beginning of June when you had staff, the county we took out of the county account to pay payroll because we were using the county's payroll system, so they would just pull the money out of the account as they needed for it to make our payroll. But since we now don't have any staff on board, we were starting to run low on our account because staff is now the one. No, you don't pay for staff out of the county account. You now pay for staff out of the Wells Fargo account because it's an outside contract. So we needed to transfer a little bit of money. I did this, and then as I was going through, and you'll see an item later in the agenda around banking issues, when I was doing my research on the banking issues, I realized we actually have a policy that the commission needs to approve any transfers from the county account to anything else. So this is that approval, asking for that approval to make that transfer official with the commission itself.
Yes, and as you pointed out, the payroll comes out of the county account directly, and all the other expenses come out of our currently Wells Fargo account. Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
I just have a question, Jason, on this matter. When applications come in and a fee is placed, does that fee automatically go to the county to hold, or do we hold it?
No, since we get the checks, I've been taking those types of checks, and we've only gotten one of them, to be fair, since I've been here. I've taken it to Wells Fargo and deposited it there, because that's where whatever fees come, whatever we have to pay for is gonna come out of that eventually anyways.
Thank you.
And I just want to commend you, Jason, too, for just jumping in with both feet and trying to figure out our new system and figuring out the files. And this was one where you figured out, oh gosh, this policy has been violated. So I'm glad you brought this to us, and I think it's a good example of your thoroughness there. So thank you very much for that. Would anyone like to make a motion to, if there's not any further discussion, would anyone like to make a motion to approve item 6?
Move to approve item 6.
Moved by Commissioner Murray,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bailey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All righty, and we are through consent and moving on to item 7, which is a proclamation for retiring Commissioner Carla Condon. And shall I go? All right. Well, we have here, thank you, Jason, for putting this together, this lovely proclamation, which I would like to read. This is a proclamation from the Marin Local Agency Formation Commission honoring Carla Condon on the occasion of her retirement from the Corte Madera Town Council. Whereas Carla Condon was first elected to the Corte Madera Town Council in 2001 and subsequently re-elected in 2005, 2009, and 2013, serving as mayor in 2003, 2010, 2015, and 2018. And whereas Carla was appointed to the Marin Local Agency Formation Commission as city member alternate in 2006, and then as a regular city member in 2011. Whereas Carla has brought to the commission the benefit of her years of experience as a former small business operator, educator, and employee of the city administrator of the city and county of San Francisco, as well as a member of the League of California Cities Housing, Community, and Economic Development Policy Committee, the Age-Friendly Corte Madera Task Force, and numerous other boards and committees. Whereas Carla currently serves as the commission's vice chair, or she did at the time, in which she has brought a steady but firm hand while helping the commission navigate through challenging circumstances and manage a productive work plan. Whereas Carla will always call it like it is with refreshing bluntness and honesty, setting a principled tone and a high standard for excellence as part of the commission leadership. Whereas Carla has served the commission with the proper balance of diligent preparation and consideration of the matters at hand and a sense of humor and warmth that brought the commission together as a harmonious working group. We would like to present you with the official resolution from this group. Do I have a motion to make the resolution?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner
Actually,
Connolly and seconded by Commissioner Bailey.
I'm sorry, Chair, it's
Sorry,
not a
John.
resolution, it's a
It's a
proclamation.
proclamation, so we're just doing, okay. Do we vote on it?
Yes, you can still
Okay.
vote on it.
All right, sorry about that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, would did any commissioners want to make any comments? No? All right. Carla, yes, please.
Are we on? Oh, good, okay. Thank you so much. That really means so much to me. And I have to tell you, I've so enjoyed being a part of LAFCo, and I already really miss it. So you all do such a super job, and just keep on doing so. Jeff, I know that you are going to be sorely missed. I just heard that you will be retiring soon. And but for the rest of you, just thank you so much for all the service that you're doing to our county. It really shows. And for this, there's just no words to thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla, for coming and letting us present that to you officially. Okay, moving on to item 7, request for time extension to complete approval terms of 276 Mesa Road to Bolinas Community Public Utility District, which is file number 1337. Jason, do you have a staff report?
Sure. On this item, the commission had already approved this, this extension and had actually put some conditions on it. My mic is kind of loud there. The applicant is still going through to try and get the approvals needed for the conditions that we put on them. It's taking them more than a year, which is what is required. If something's not done within a year, and the commission doesn't take action, the file basically gets killed, and it would have to go back through the process again. So this is their request to have an extension given to them. I think it's a fair request. They are trying to meet the requirements that the commission put on them. They're getting their coastal permit. It just takes a while for that process to be put forward. So I am okay with giving that. I would recommend giving them a 1-year extension. They should be completed in theory by spring or summer of next year.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Commissioner Blanchfield?
Questions. This isn't the original applicant to us, is that correct?
That is correct. The original applicant sold the property, and this is the person who bought it is now trying to go through that process.
So the issue before the county in a local coastal permit is that they're presented with a new project. I would assume that's why a new permit is needed. And the environmental documents for that permit is something we would have to rely on. So if we're relying on the environmental permit for the first time, and we're looking at the second one, is there a potential problem there?
Yeah, I would have to check with legal counsel on whether or not that would change anything. I think that if the project hasn't changed, it's just the owner. I think from our perspective, it probably wouldn't make too big of a deal, but I will yield to legal counsel if they have another opinion.
That's correct, that's what I was gonna say. I see any information that says the project has changed. Just the
Well, I
ownership.
read that they're now applying for a coastal permit.
They're applying
On
for
their own, or is this just taking up the
This
original?
This is taking up what we originally had requested them to do. So when the ownership changed, they said they said that we still wanted to have the application. Can you turn off your mic?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess both our mics can't be on. They said that all they're doing is the ownership change. They're doing the exact same project. So I don't think from our perspective it changes anything.
Okay,
And just point of clarification, I don't think any of that is germane to a request for an extension anyway.
no, I was just concerning they're extending, but they're actually applying for a new permit to the county. And that would be a change in a project.
That's before us, really.
I can help. I don't think it's I don't think they're making a new application. It actually is the original application with a new owner. So I think there's
So
been
it's
any
the same,
change.
it's the same
Yeah.
project going forward.
The only comment I would make is that the change in ownership probably added to the length of time also, but I don't think that's important to LAFCO at this point.
You're probably correct on that.
Jason, just one question. So it does look like their coastal permit application is expected in the county first quarter of 2019. We have extended ones longer for a year. Is this, so we're not having to just keep coming back and extending as part of the process? That's one question. One, can we extend longer than a year? Is it reasonable to do that? And then the second question is, looks like we provided a condition of approval for public right-of-way, modifications of public right-of-way. And is there going to be some more detail coming back on that?
That was all completed when you did the approvals. The only thing that was kind of left, that from my understanding, what was left to me in the files is the only thing that was left was for them to get that coastal permit. Once they get the coastal permit, they have completed everything else that they need to do. As far as your year comment, this application actually doesn't come up until October, but because of when meeting dates are, we run into a 1-year problem. It's one of the things that we're going to have a discussion about at some point if we actually are able to, instead of having it be to the date, it can be to the month. So we would actually normally want to bring this up, but just based on when meeting dates occur, we're bringing it up at this meeting, so not to avoid that. So I don't think we're going to have any issues going past that. And there is also a side issue of, we do, when they make the request, they have to give us a check for a 1-year extension. So if we did more than 1 year, we would potentially have to ask them for a larger fee. And if that's not needed, I would hate to ask them for more money than what we would need to actually do. So I think keeping it to the 1 year time frame is actually good for that purpose.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
And the extension would be for 1 calendar year from the previous extent?
Yes, it would be for one calendar year from the previous, so it would be October, I forget what the date is off the top of my head, but
October 27, 2019, okay.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, hang on a second. Do we have any public comment on this application? Nope, seeing none. All right, moved by Commissioner Connolly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bailey. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Item number 9, civil grand jury report. So this, you'll note that there was something in the consent calendar that was just to ratify a response to the grand jury report. This is actually talking about the ways that we could follow through on that. So Jason, if you would give us a...
And on the response now that we're bringing it up, which I thought was well written. My understanding, though, is on responding to these grand jury reports, there is some magic language you have to include by statute where you actually literally say agree, disagree, or, you know, X, Y, and Z or whatever. That was not in there. So
That was in the cover of it, which if you look at the attachment, there's the cover, and in that cover, that's where we covered whether we agree, disagree, or did that
okay,
in-between thing.
all right. So, thank you.
And we did also run that by council before we sent it out.
Great.
Jason, go ahead.
Okay, so on this item, what the discussion here today is partly to help to address what's in the civil grand jury report and have a discussion about how does consolidation works within LAFCO, because the civil grand jury really never got into, they just said consolidate. They didn't really say how to do it or what way to do it, and there's a lot of different options. It's amazing actually how many different ways that you can do consolidations and various forms thereof. So what I did is I went back and looked at, and actually our legal firm had actually a few years ago, and it's in your packet, had done a really good memo on the different ways to do it. It's like a 30-something page memo that really gets into some more of the details of it. But from a high level, there's 4 ways that we could act on this subject matter. We can sit back and let each of the impacted special districts pass a similar resolution. They then send that to us, and in a lot of ways that ties our hands. We then have to move forward. There are some limited abilities for us to reject or to make changes to it, but it's very limited in nature to what we can do. That is generally from LAFCO's perspective, and not just, I'm not just speaking for Marin, but I'm speaking more of a general philosophy within California of all the LAFCOs. That's the preferred method to go down. It's in some ways for LAFCO at least the easiest and the simplest way to do it. The next option, or one of the other options, is that you could have one of the districts make the motion, and then we start this whole process going down of they make the motion, it comes to us, and then we inform the other body that they want to do this, and then it kind of follows in some ways a similar pattern. If they agree, then we go down a similar path, or if they disagree, then there's a whole bunch of protests and other things that get involved in. I didn't want to get into the weeds of that part until we figured out which direction we're going in. But there's that one. Then there's one where LAFCO, for the lack of a better term, can force the issue. We just say, we're going to merge you whether you want to or not. And then we go down a whole big protest period, and we have a really big, large fight. This is probably the least pleasant way to do it, and is not one that I would ever recommend going down unless it was an absolute emergency type situation. Los Angeles is actually going through one of these right now. They have a water district down there that they've been trying to merge for quite some time. And actually just recently they started getting brown water coming out of all their pipes, and basically the citizens finally raised up. The board still refused to do anything about it. So Los Angeles LAFCO is going through one of these forced mergers right now. It is not a fun process to go through, would not recommend it. And then the fourth way is through citizens petition. If the citizens of the impacted bodies were to get enough signatures on a petition, we would then, it would kind of be like as if the body of one of the special districts themselves sent us a resolution. We would then start the process moving forward. So that's from a high level how the process would work. My recommendation that I have in the staff report is that allow staff to go out and talk with each of the impacted special districts. Actually, I believe we have representatives here from them. And also then go to the public at large, especially the 2 smaller districts that would be, in my opinion, the most impacted. That's San Quentin and Murray Park are the 2 that would be most impacted. Sit down, they're small communities. I think we could have a community meeting with them. I could sit down, talk with them, find out if they're for it, if they're against it, what their issues are, and then come back to this body and report on what I find, kind of do it a fact-finding mission. Go out, report back what I find, and then we can make a determination. If everyone's in favor of it, if no one's really opposing it, then we go down the simple path. If there's opposition or something's going on, we can then have a discussion about what would be the next steps. Does LAFCo want to take the lead on it or not? So right now, all I would be recommending, let's just find out what's going on. It seems like these would make a good merger position, and you might remember when you did the Central Marin wastewater MSR, one of the recommendations that came out of that MSR was that actually what the civil grand jury suggested should occur. So we've already kind of taken a stance that we think that this is a good idea to merge them. We should actually, let's put some feet on the ground and figure out what would actually take to get it, and which is the best path for us.
Questions from commissioners? Lou,
So
questions from
just to
Walter?
kind of add to your summary, I think there is a 3A, and specifically the state legislature passed a bill that allows Marin LAFCo to specifically force the consolidation of the Southern Marin districts without going through the other steps that you described before. So there is an additional force that Marin LAFCo has for the Southern Marin sanitation districts.
You are correct, although that, I believe, is for all of the sanitation districts, not just these 3.
It is for all, in the grand jury report, it goes through and mentions all of the sanitation districts of Southern Marin, and they are all party to the legislation that was passed.
You
So
are.
it doesn't cover what you're talking about with San Quentin, but it does cover the other groups in here, the other group in here, that's for the Southern Marin sanitation districts.
You are correct, and that would be another path in some ways, but that would be broader than what the civil grand jury report said as far as those 3 districts and what they're asking LAFCO to do. And I believe LAFCO tried to go down that path. I wasn't here at the time, so I'm assuming some of the commissioners with a longer history than me could go into more detail on that.
And we're just talking about Murray Park and San Quentin Village at the moment. Commissioner Blanchfield, you had a comment?
Just for information, my understanding is we've already initiated discussions, Rachel did when she was here, with Murray Park and San Quentin, and there was a reception there, and so I think that when you follow up on that, it would be a good impetus to continue that work.
Okay, any other questions before we move to public comment? Is there any public comment on this issue?
Good evening. My name is Eric Stager. I'm with Marin County Department of Public Works. And I just did want to mention that the County of Marin also received a copy of the grand jury report, and our Board of Supervisors provided responses, particularly on this subject, and that our board said that they were open to the merger or consolidation, provided that we had community outreach, which it sounds like your commission is considering, and that there'd be some analysis on what it benefits to consolidation. So that's all I have to say for tonight. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
Mike?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jason. Thank you very much. Eric, any further public comment? We'll bring it back to the commission for deliberation.
So, Mr. Steiger, did the county have any outreach with, specifically with Murray Park or San Quentin Village?
No, sir, we have not done any outreach.
Yes, Commissioner Kais.
Just another data point. Back in June, before the required deadline for the responses, I called and talked with and had a very nice conversation with Ron Brown, who was the chairman of the Marin Grand Jury, Civil Grand Jury. And that was about 2 days before the term of the current Marin Civil Grand Jury expired. So Ron acknowledged that he doesn't really care, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he doesn't really care about this item, nor does anybody else who's on the Marin Civil Grand Jury, because they are all now retired from their term, and it was one of those things that Jay just covered because it was necessary to kind of go through the process. But there won't be any pursuit of this based on the grand jury, since that grand jury has expired and has no further action expected for it. Just FYI.
All right. Any further deliberation on this item? Anybody have any thoughts? I think Commissioner Blanchfield seems supportive of the option 1. Okay.
Sashi, yes. So, I mean, it seems obvious to me that sort of in a good faith way to some sort of reach out effort makes sense, a phone call or a meeting or something. My question is related to that, though. In that same civil grand jury report, it's pointed out that the the civil grand jury thought that LAFCO was pretty badly underfunded. How is your staffing time and ability to do outreach like this? Have you already budgeted and planned for it? Does it fit within what you had previously expected? Is it more work than you'd anticipated? Like, how big a deal is this?
I would say it would be coursework for what we would want to work on. I mean, there would definitely need to be a discussion about the fact that we don't have full staffing right now and what are our priorities. One of the things that we will be having a discussion about at the workshop is kind of around that subject matter and potentially be having some consultants come in and help us do some of the, like MSRs and getting us caught up in some of those areas. So depending on what comes out of that workshop, I can see it, but I also don't see this being very much time for me to go out and have a couple of meetings with some people. Be part of my core dues anyways to be meeting with the special districts, but adding a couple of extra meetings to meet with the public, I don't think adds much time. What comes out of that could be a determination at that point, how much time do we put into it. But I don't think from a standpoint right now that it would take too much time away from my other responsibilities.
Thank you.
Jason, would it be LAFCo who would need to facilitate the public outreach on this, or would it be the districts themselves who would do that, or perhaps Ross Valley within which they would be consolidated?
You could go down either. You can go down any of those paths. You know, this has been seems like from an outsider's perspective, because I'm new to this subject matter, that there's been that this has been on the discussion table for quite a long time. And if it's LAFCO's desire to try and consolidate districts and try and shrink the number of districts that are here where it makes sense, I'm not saying we do it everywhere and then we force things, but if there are some, what I would call easy wins out there, and this seems like this might be one of those cases where it might be an easy win, that if we want to see it occur in any sort of timely manner, LAFCO will need to put some energy into it. That's not to say that the district staffs themselves won't have to also put some time into it. And maybe when we're doing stuff, what I would be doing is I would be trying to set up a community meeting and be inviting the staff from the districts as well to be part of that. So it's everyone in the same room together. It's not just me sitting there, but it's everyone in the same room having the discussion. Because from my perspective right now, probably the biggest hurdle that could potentially get in the way of this is a resident protest occurring. I don't think that the districts necessarily, as staff or boards, are going to protest it. I think that your biggest chance of a protest actually comes from the residents. So if everyone's in that room together, we potentially save ourselves a lot of energy and time farther down the road rather than going down the process and learning you're going to have a protest and you're never going to win it. Let's figure that it'll be more time effective now to figure that out rather than 6 months from now.
So, but with your option one, the agencies would be the ones putting in the application, and we would be working on any kind of community meeting like that with them, and any fees that might, or any expenses that might come out of conducting such a community meeting, like as in mailers, or I'm not sure if we would do mailers, but any kind of expense like that would be passed through to the agencies, would it not? That wouldn't come out of our budget?
Yes, that could be them. That would be something we would decide later. I mean, this is right now, what I'm really doing is trying to find out is the community interested or not, and not with it, because I don't want to spend a lot of time if it's going to have a huge fight, or at least know that ahead of time, and come back and report, here's what I've learned. It's going to be an easy thing. I don't think it's going to take a lot of my time initially. I'm not going to be doing mailers or any of that type of stuff for the first meeting that we sit down with them on. It's going to be, who can we find in the community? Can we find a night that we get a good sampling of the community, because they're both small groups, get a good sampling of the folks, talk to them, figure out what the results are, and then come back and report. And at that point, I think that's when we'd have to have a discussion about budget, who's doing what, when, where, why, and how, and making sure that LAFCO is getting reimbursed for any costs that we should be getting reimbursed for from either the special districts or whoever's initiating the process.
Okay.
So that's it.
Yep.
So just to follow up on that, a couple points. If we initiate it though, then I believe we need to cover the cost like we did with Southern Marin when we initiated that discussion. I think at that point, we covered the whole cost within the current budget. There wasn't any costing out to the agency.
Yeah, that's traditionally how it is done. If you're initiating it, you cover the costs. If they're initiating it, they cover the costs.
Well, that's not exactly complete, because in the case of Southern Marin, it ended up having to be a vote of all the districts who were affected, and each of the districts was assessed the fee for the vote. So the districts had to pay a fee for doing the vote as part of the consideration of the consolidation.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that, but thanks. The other point I just wanted to make was, I think one of the challenges is, I think the service will be exactly the same. Am I correct, Eric, about the provider? So the only real issue probably that needs to be addressed is the cost of that service, because it's quite a bit less than the normal Ross Valley rate. And I think probably being creative with that agency, you can resolve that over time. So,
Absolutely correct on that.
Just one point, I mean, it's possible that all four agencies get together and say, let's split the cost, so there isn't one agency sharing the burden or not sharing the burden of the cost.
We are responsible for the fee structures, and we can waive fees that we have anytime we want to. So it would be up to the commission as a policy decision whether or not they wanted to do a different fee structure for this particular case than is the traditional fee structure that they've already established.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Does anyone want to make a motion for, do you want to, is this a staff direction or is this a motion?
I think it would be good to, it could be done either way. If it's done by motion, you can do it that way, or you can just, if I have the indication I should go talk with them, I will go do that. So whichever way you want to do it.
All right, well, does that, how does that, how about if we just go, how does everybody feel about option one?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, Commissioner Rodoni? Yep. Vice Chair Murray, yep. Commissioner Blanchfield? Commissioner Bailey, yes. Commissioner Connolly? Yes, okay. Yes, I think we're unanimously giving you that direction. All right. All right, so moving on to item 10, evaluation on other post-employment benefit liabilities.
So on this item, this is another one of those things that after the last meeting, I became aware of the fact that every 2 years, we need to do a CalPERS update on our retirement system of where we're at. And it turns out that this year is that 2-year mark. We had to turn in some information on June 28th and then had to turn in some information at the end of July. I quickly went out and found a firm. It turns out that the firm that we used to have doesn't do the type of retirement, the GAPSB report that we need. CalPERS changed the type of GAPSB report that we needed, and the firm that we had been using didn't do it. They gave me a recommendation of another firm, and we used that firm. They did excellent work for us. They were able to get everything in on time. They actually helped us out prior to being under contract to figure out how to meet the June 28th deadline, which was great and amazing. They did all that work basically for free. And then they billed us for the work that they did otherwise. The contract is in the packet as well as the report itself. I actually received word this week back from CalPERS that they accepted all the information and everything was done correctly and completely. So we are now done with that item for 2 years, thankfully. I learned all about retirement systems and how they work over the last month because I had not ever done one of those before. So I want to thank our firm that did it. They did excellent work. And this is more of an item more for your information and to file and accept the contract. That one thing I did do is I did talk with our chair about it during the process to get approval to sign the contract and to move forward with stuff. Because if we hadn't done that, we would not have met any of the deadlines. So.
And this is about other post-employment benefits, about retiree health care, not on about pension for our single retiree. And you have to do some actuarial calculations every two years, and this is what Kathy McLeod has done. Kathy McLeod is who we've used at City of Mill Valley. She has a really excellent reputation, and I think it was really great that she was able to squeeze us in. I think that was part of the deal too. Any questions on this item? Would you like a motion or?
Yeah, a motion to file and accept would be great.
Motion moved, Commissioner Bailey. Second, Commissioner Rodoni. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving along. Item number 11, approve voting delegates to the Cal LAFCo conference. Jason.
Yeah, so every year we get to select 2 delegates to vote on our behalf at the Cal LAFCo conference. Looking through the records, it looks like traditionally the chair is the voting delegate, and then another commissioner is the alternate delegate. And when you don't have 2 commissioners going, staff fills in one of those roles, depending on how many commissioners are going. So today we need to actually take a motion to approve commissioners. Right now, the only commissioners that have indicated that they are going are our chair and vice chair, and then I will also be attending. One caveat I put in, if you'll notice in the staff report, is since the conference is not until October, just in case something occurs, I kind of gave you the idea of a backup plan. Allow that the chair to reassign if whoever you assign tonight or whoever you select tonight can't make it, that the chair could assign someone else to fill that seat or that position, just in case someone has to pull out last minute, because it is almost 2 months away from now. So I think people's schedules do change.
Alrighty. Any discussion or motion? Anyone?
Just out of curiosity, did that
Mike?
hotel escape the fire?
From what I understand, yeah, we should be okay on that front. The fire is not on that part of it, although the smoke is impacting the entire valley, so that's a slightly different issue. But hopefully the smoke will have cleared by then.
I'll move that we appoint the chair and the vice chair.
Second.
Can you just signal which one is the delegate and which one is the alternate
The
delegate?
chair will be the voting delegate.
So moved by Commissioner Bailey and seconded by Commissioner Baker. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, item number 12, banking options.
On this item, when stuff was being transitioned over to me, I needed to get a login to do our transfer of monies between our checking account and our secondary checking account. We basically have 2 checks that we write from Marin LAFCo. One is for items that are $3,000 or more, and that requires 2 signatures on it, which is either chair, vice chair, and executive officer. It have to be 2 of those 3 people have to sign. And then for things under 3,000, it can just be 1 signature, which is normally just the executive officer signing to pay bills. When I was getting my login stuff so I could do stuff, it turns out Wells Fargo ties logins to an individual, and you only get 1 login for all of your Wells Fargo accounts. So I happen to have a home mortgage through Wells Fargo. I got it through a brokerage mortgage company and sold it to Wells Fargo. It wasn't really by my choice. But Wells Fargo has my home mortgage. So as it stands right now, I can log in and I can look at my home mortgage and our 2 checking accounts. It turns out, and I have not tested it, nor will I ever test it, I think I can transfer money between all those accounts. That is not a very good position to be in, because while I have no intention of ever doing it, accidents do occur, something could be wrong. I just don't think it's smart and wise for us to have a banking institution that can't figure out how to do 2 different logins for the system. And so I reached out to the chair and the vice chair, our bookkeeper, legal counsel, everyone was made aware of it as soon as I found out about this, and started doing research into who else could we use for banking. Looked at several different options. The option to cut the thing short was Bank of Marin seemed to have the best options for us. They allow people, while I don't have anything at Bank of Marin, if your future executive officer or future staff person does, they will give you 2 separate logins. You will not have your 2 accounts mixed whatsoever. They fit that need. They fit all of our other needs that we had. The only other one that came close to fitting all of our other needs was Redwood Credit Union. The one thing that they couldn't provide to us is 2 signature verification on checks. We have the ability to present them checks with 2 signatures on it, but they will only ever verify 1 signature. So for me, Bank of Marin became the choice. For the most part, all of the banks had similar fees and similar schedules, so there wasn't really much there. One bonus that Bank of Marin kind of does offer is we can actually have different types of logins for people. So I can have a login where I can deal with all the money, but our bookkeeper can actually have a separate login where all they can do is look at all of our finances, but can't actually transfer or touch the money itself. Right now, our bookkeeper uses my login, so once again, looking at my home finances, but can go in and do all the stuff that they need to do. This will actually give them the ability to do it without having to use my login. They'll have their own separate login, which I thought was a nice feature to add for our system. So there are 2 motions, or one motion that has 2 parts in it. One is to approve the potential of using a new bank if you wanted to go down that way, and second was to approve the transfer of funds to the Bank of Marin from the county, because that, as I learned, that requires the commission's approval to do.
Okay, any questions? Commissioner Rodoni.
Jason, just wondering, transferring the whole 300,000, do we have opportunities for interest earning accounts at the new bank? Because I think the county pays interest and our interest is a couple $1,000s a year, so I wouldn't want to forego that by moving all the money at once or a large amount at once. If
Amount of money, one of the things to keep in mind is last year you transferred, oh, my mic went off. Last year you transferred over $200,000 at the beginning of the year. So I kind of took that as an indication of how much you normally do to the system, and then added a little bit extra because you no longer have payroll. I am now payroll. $300,000 is probably, it doesn't get us through the whole year. It only gets us through part of the year. So this is to help us get everything set up. There's also some fees and stuff that if we have a level amount that we actually get some fees waived. So this is kind of we may not get some interest, but we also don't have to pay fees. So this is us getting the system set up. If you wanted to transfer a little bit less, I would be fine with that. One of the things to keep in mind is it takes like a week for the county to actually do transfers. So I want to make sure we have enough money in there for a while, just so we can get things set up and then take another look at it a little bit later and figure out what is the right amount to be keeping in that account based on fee structures and other things.
Any other comments or questions? Are you happy with that amount?
I just think, I'm not sure it's prudent to move a lot of money into an account that doesn't pay interest. I don't know what the thresholds for no fees are, but.
It does pay a little bit of interest off of the account, but it's not the same as the county's interest, that's for sure. And so I transferred, it's about half of what's in our Marin account. So we're keeping about half in the Marin account and half would be going to the Bank of Marin.
I think the idea was that everything still goes into the county. County would take advantage of the county's ability to bear interest, but because now we don't have any salaries, normally all that will get pulled out of the county account. Now temporarily we have to move more to the regular account. All right, any other questions? You have a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation number 1.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry. One thing I forgot to add, if we can add to the motion, and because it's not perfectly clear, allow me to open up a credit card with the Bank of Marin. We have one with Wells Fargo right now. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. All the mics are on, which is causing bounce back. There we go. Thank you. So adding to it, add on that we also open up a credit card with them. So because when we close out our account with Wells Fargo, we lose our credit card at that point. And we better to keep our credit card in the same bank as our checking account. Sorry about that.
Include that part of the motion.
All right, moved by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Blanchfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Item 13, computer server options.
So at the last meeting, you may remember I mentioned that our computer server is getting old. It actually uses an outdated version of Windows, which Microsoft no longer updates. So we are actually opening ourselves up to a security issue farther down the road. The longer we go without having a Windows operation that actually has proper security on it, we open ourselves up to security breaches within our server system. So what I'm bringing in front of you today is basically what I consider 2 different options. We looked at potentially just updating Windows. The computer is so old that if we updated Windows, we're going to be back here in a year or 2 trying to replace the computer anyways. Didn't seem like very cost-effective or smart move to make. The next option was, what if we just got a new PC like we have right now? What would that cost? That cost was exorbitant because, as our IT person said, we have a computer system that's way more powerful than what LAFCo actually needs for our purposes. So what he suggested was a smaller server type box. It's only really meant to be a server. It's not something that you would go and do your photo editing on or create documents on. It's really just a place to store your store everything. And that costs just under $2,000 when you take in their time to update our system. Some of the work that they do is covered by our contract with them now, but not everything that they would need to do for the new server is. So the estimate that you have has a few staff hours involved with it. The other option that was brought up by our chair at the last meeting to look into was looking at a cloud-based server system. So we did some basic research into that. There would still need to be a little bit more research done, but basically all those systems are a monthly fee service system. So the question is, do we want to pay an upfront cost to do all the work, or do we want to have a monthly fee and not really own the system, but more rent it from a cloud-based server? The cloud-based servers all tended to be about $25 a month for the level that we needed. The best example that we used was a company called Box. It's different than Dropbox, which is what we use for getting New Year's stuff. Box actually has the encryptions that you need for a server, where Box doesn't necessarily have that, or at least at the same price levels that they have. So the question that would really come before you is, would you prefer to buy or rent? My recommendation would be to buy. When I did the cost comparison, it seemed like after about 2 years and 8 months, we would actually own our server outright at the same price it would take to rent the cloud-based server system. So normally these servers last 5+ years. It seems to me like it's much more cost efficient and effective to go for the long run to buy the server, have it in-house. One of the other benefits of that is everything after we buy it and get it installed is taken care of under our current contract with Marin Mac for our IT services, where if we do things with Box, some stuff, or some outside cloud-based server, some stuff is covered in the contract, but there may be some times where we ask them to do things that are not part of our contract. So we would potentially even have to pay them staffing levels above what we pay them now. So to me, it seemed like a safer, more smart thing for the long run for the commission to buy a server and go down that road. But I'm not objecting to a cloud-based system either. Either one could work for us.
And the server, would there be, what would be the backup plan, or would Marin Mac Tech be backing up our server? That's one of the benefits of the cloud-based.
Yeah, Marin Mac Tech then backs up our server gets backed up now. They already have a backup system that's used on the current server. That same system would basically be in place for the new server. So if something did happen to the server, we had a big power outage, some big explosion, something occurred in the room, there is a backup that does exist outside of that box.
How often do they back it up?
I think it's backed up daily, but I need to double check with them on that.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody have any thoughts on what they would prefer, cloud-based or buying a server? No opinions? Alternate Commissioner Caius, do you want to step up to the mic here and give us your opinion?
I don't believe we want cloud-based.
And why not?
My experience is that the difficulties and the support and the cost all end up being in the negative.
My experience has been completely positive, so maybe that it varies, but does anyone else have a strong opinion on which way we should go here?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation, which is to buy it, and see where we go from there.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other thoughts? No? All right. Yeah, I personally lean towards the cloud-based, but I'm happy to go with what the commission wants here. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Executive officer report.
As you've seen, as I did the last meeting, and I've done again in this meeting, I'm trying to fine-tune the executive officer's report a little bit. Under the budget end-of-the-year projections, if we can have mics turned off, I seem to always get bouncing off of it. Thank you. The first part A, I'll go through these one at a time, and if you have questions on them, let me know. The budget update for 17-18 and year-end projections, it's actually the year-end. It's still a projection because our bookkeeper still needs to do some end-of-the-year bookkeeping closing, and that takes a little bit of time. So what you have is I changed the format a little bit. I took this out of it's a simpler process for you to look at, in my opinion, than what had been presented in the past, where it's one sheet. You can see where we're at with each line item. Based on how we do our budget and the county does its budget, there's a little bit of a thing around staff salaries of how things get reported, so you'll see some zeros there. On those on areas where it's staff, look at the total amount. That's more relevant than looking at the individual line items as far as where we're at. You will notice that there are some very big gaps because we had some changes over with not having staff here all the staff full time. We have a lot of extra money in the staff account, but then you see money being spent in other accounts, particularly professional services. One of the things, once we get our committees established after the workshop, I'm going to want to sit down with the budget committee and actually work on readjusting our current budget for the current fiscal year that we're in right now to adjust for the fact that we have a lot more professional service and a lot less staff for this fiscal year, and we should adjust for that in the budget and transfer some money around. Once we get all that done, we'll bring something back for a motion for this body to look at. But just wanted to give you that as a heads up that that's something that I see coming down the pike if we want to keep our line items being equivalent to what they should be. So if there's no questions on,
Well,
yeah,
Jason, where would the Plan West contract show up on here?
professional services.
Okay.
You now will have professional services covering Plan West, which is for executive officer services. It also covers Nelson HR, which is where we get VITA from. So in the past, we would have, that would all be under staff, but now that's going to be all coming from professional services because we are not your staff.
Help me out, Jason. Where is that? Oh, there it is. 5210110. Okay, it's
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 lines down underneath the MSARA thing there. Professional
Correct.
services. Okay.
And you'll already notice that we've already are spending a little bit off just in that calendar year from 1 month of us being here. Just imagine what that'll be like after 6 months of that occurring. So,
Okay.
So on the progress report, I basically kept that the same as, I didn't make any changes to what you had been presented last month. Where at the workshop next month, we will actually be creating a new work plan. And one of my goals is to readjust a little bit how we present that information. I want a more living, I would prefer, and this will be part of the workshop discussion, a more living document rather than something that's, here's what our top 10 priorities are, do we complete them or not? I actually want to have a process that gives updates as to where we're at with each of those projects rather than just, it's underway or it's completed type of a thing. I want to actually get a little more detail into it. So I'm going to work on a modified version of that and work with you once we have that new work plan in place. And then the final one is current and pending proposals. You'll see that this is a much different version than what you've had in the past. My goal here is to have the staff report tell you what are the new things that have occurred with your current and pending proposals, and then give you the highlights of what's occurred. So you'll see under current proposals, we actually had 2 that we completed, that we got all the information, we sent it to the Board of Equalization. As far as I'm concerned now, unless Board of Equalization says we did something wrong, they are now filed and completed from my perspective. A third of the 4 current proposals awaiting terms to be completed, we gave 1 an extension, and then the 4th one is not due until December. So I'll be coming back probably in either October or December to have a discussion with you about either they have been completed or we need to give them an extension if that's what they're looking for. And then you'll see no updates under current proposals or pending proposals because I had no updates to give. And I could very easily see there be an individual meeting where all 3 of those columns actually say no updates. When you turn the page, you then get the staff report, which gives you, and I still need to work on formatting of this a little bit, and happy to take any suggestions. I know the chair gave me a couple suggestions the other day of how to make it a little bit easier to read. But my goal there is this is where you get all your information, and there will be a column latest update. So you know what was the last thing that actually occurred with that rather than having to have it in a staff report. It'll just be there in case you want to take a peek at what's going on.
Do you want to mention the pending?
Oh, yeah, and yes, and I was going to get to the pending one. The last page, which says pending, those are actually future items. You'll notice one of them talks about legislation that was passed in January 1st, 2015. We at some point in time should have a discussion about when does future or pending items drop off of the list? How do we handle that? Because if it's been sitting there for 4 years, is it likely to actually come to us? These are not things that we've initiated, or these are the things we've heard. I'm guessing rumors or have gotten official word from somebody. We might do something with you in the future. At some point in time, clearly it's not going to happen. So we should have a discussion about when those pending items actually fall off of pending, and we just say, it's not coming to us in the future anytime soon, so we're not going to worry about it. So we'll have more discussion of some of this stuff at the workshop as well. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, which leads me to the last of the agendized items on this, which is the workshop. Just want to remind folks that that's September 12th at the Sheriff's Office over on Los Gamos, right by our office, from 9 to 2. That will also happen to be our former chair's last meeting with us, so I hope everyone will attend to celebrate his last workshop with us as he parts ways. So you will be getting an agenda soon on that to give you some thoughts of as we're moving forward with that. I know there's been a lot of discussion here over the last year about what to talk about at the workshop, so I'm not going to get into that part of it. Some of the other items, just to have a discussion about, just so you're aware of what staff has been working on. We've been doing a lot outside of what's already been reported on as agenda items, because that's taken a lot of work as well. Vita and myself have been working on things like getting our filing system in place. Vita has actually done an excellent job on that. One of the things that you'll probably be seeing coming into the future are new name tags. These are a lot easier to do. We ordered enough so everyone will have the same size name tag, and then instead of buying those ones and having them mismatch because you can never find the vendors change their name tag processes around. You can never really get the same ones over and over again. We can, nowadays with modern computers and modern printers, you can actually print really nice. These are printed on paper. You can print really nice ones up. So we're looking at switching to this type of a system so everyone has the same ones. It also allows us to put down on there the chair, vice chair, commissioner, have an alternate designation on there too, so we can have everything clear and easy to understand from a perspective. And as people change, we can immediately change name tags around. We don't have to wait 2 or 3 weeks for a company to print stuff up and mail it to us. So that's something that Vita is very good with graphic design stuff, so she's been working on that. We've also been doing, like I said, a lot of the filing. I've cleared out pretty much all of the loose file, what I call the loose files that were not in the filing cabinets. All of Rachel and Keen's old files, I've now figured out what's in all of them, working through them. There will be some items that we will be seeing coming up on the next meeting, one of which will be a discussion about our public seat, since the public seat is going to become vacant. We'll have a full discussion on that. We will also start our discussion about special district elections. Two of our special district elections come up in 2019. It's like a 180-day process. That was one of the things that we were figuring out, how do these various processes work. Since we run the elections and it takes a while, we'll be having a discussion at our next meeting about getting that process started, and we'll present something to you about that. So the special, even though they don't expire until May, we need to start that far out. And then I was also, as I was going through files, realizing that our conflict of interest policy is supposed to be updated every 2 years. October will be 2 years. So we will be having a discussion about updating our conflict of interest policy. I don't think it'll probably be very extensive of an update. I know there was a very extensive one done last time. And so I think the only thing we're really gonna have a discussion about is, has any state things changed that require us to actually do an update? And it may be that there's not, but we'll bring that back to you at that point in time. Just looking at some of the other things that we're doing, we're updating our master lists for the special districts and everyone else. Some of the stuff is a little old and outdated, so staff has been working on that. And then we're filing more. Oh yeah, and our website, we're getting that all squared off and up to speed as well. But Vita's been working on that stuff too. So that's my update.
All right. Any questions?
I think you also, in part of the office cleanup, there's some hardware too, right? Kind of took care of some hardware items.
Yeah, the hardware's... Mike went off. We have some old computers and stuff like that that we're also working on the process of getting them properly disposed of as well.
One last thing, and this maybe for legal counsel too. So the way we operate under Rosenberg rule, is that something that you think it's be in a workshop function or something at a future board meeting to review and discuss?
I would say that we should probably have that as part of the discussion at the workshop, and then if there needs to be follow-up, I have been creating a list of things that need to be put into our policy handbook, things I think that might need to be updated as I've been going through and realizing how stuff is written. Some of it isn't necessarily as clear as it maybe needed to be, or now that we've actually had to do some stuff, maybe we need to update it a little bit based on, like, we have a petty cash fund. We use credit cards. We don't have a petty cash actually in the office. So there are things like that that maybe will be part of that discussion as well for the policy committee.
All right. Anything else there? Okay, any commissioner announcements and requests? All right, then we will adjourn to closed session to discuss one item, and then we'll come back here and then adjourn to the next meeting. All right, we will return to open session, and Janet, will you?
There's nothing to report out.
All right, nothing to report out. Okay, and a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Chair Commissioner Blanchfield.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, adjourned.